All right. Hello, everybody. This is Ben over at Empires Comics here in Sacramento, California. And as you know, we like to have a lot of creatives come into the shop so we can interview them. But when we can't get the creators into the shop, we have this Google Hangout where we get to meet new people, find out about their projects, about their life, about their creativity, about, maybe some words of inspiration for you who want to do this. And tonight, we are talking for the first time to Ken Garing, who has a new comic coming out through Image called, I wanted to say GOGOR, but it's GOGOR. And of course, you guys will know him from Planetoid, and we'll find out all about him and those books. Welcome to the show, and thank you very much for joining us tonight, Ken.
Thanks for having me.
So then let's do this. So let's go back and start at the beginning. Actually, I know what it was because you actually said on one of your blog posts what it was that really got you going and wanted to be a comic artist. But how long have you loved comic books, and how long has it been a part of your life?
All the way back. I was born in the 80s. I was born in 1982. And so, that 80s period, it was like, Saturday morning cartoons, comic books, action figures, video games. So for me, it was just part of that. It was just like a lot of people, comic books, reading them at the spinner rack. Like when my mom would go to the grocery store and I was a little kid, I would, she would just set me there, and then it just never stopped. I mean, but as far back as I can remember, I have an older brother, and he would read like Mad magazine. And yeah, when I was real little, it was just like whatever was around, but I did start zeroing in on like Spider-Man, like Eric Larson, Todd McFarlane era Spider-Man, like identifying their styles and stuff. And even before that too, I should say, like picture books, even like children's books. There's a author illustrator named Stephen Kellogg that did like a Paul Bunyan book. They were popular like in the 80s, but I remember being a kid and like liking his particular style, liking his books, like identifying them as being his. And I always like drawing and stuff. But yeah, it goes all the way back for me. It's
okay, and you just answered my next question. The art has always been a part of your life too. Did you start drawing at a young age, or is this something you picked up later on?
Yeah, again, like a lot of kids, like drawing in school, and just continuing on with it, getting more and more serious. I was a little bit lucky because my grandpa had an art background, so my parents didn't see it as like a weird thing. They saw it like as a legitimate, career or thing to pursue. And same thing with comics, like they just saw it as like reading and stuff. So I never had anything that was like, oh, it's time to put the away, or it's not serious or something. Like so as I got more into art, it just went along with my interest in
okay
comics.
And you said your grandpa had did they have a career in art? What did he do?
Yeah, no, he went to Pratt and Pratt Institute of Art, I guess it's New York. My parents are from the East Coast, and he was a commercial artist for a time. And when I was a kid, I would see his old like catalogs and stuff back when that was drawn by people. So yeah, I think it was just something he did for a short time, but yeah.
Okay. So this has just been part of your life since the very beginning. And so did you yourself have any background in art? Did you go to school for it? Did you pursue it? Or is it just something that you did as you continued to grow?
Well, I mean, I was really into it like in high school. I'm trying to think if I didn't have any formal, just like in school taking art classes and like getting really into the projects that we would do there. And just on my own time, like really getting books out of the library on like anatomy and perspective and stuff like that. But I came to San Francisco where I've been ever since, and went to the Academy of Art for like 2 years, just a couple years, like 2.5 years.
Okay.
Here, and I studied illustration, like traditional. It was more like fine art because it was a lot of painting and figure drawing and stuff like that.
Okay, now then I know, I mean, you're obviously putting out comic books and you've done them before. Do you do art outside of that? Is this like a part of your life and the comics just happen to be something else, or are comics the devoted medium?
Yeah, it's kind of the other way around. Like comics, you know, I always wanted to do comics, but I would kind of get little jobs here and there, and just like projects in the years. Like in my 20s, I worked at an art gallery that it's like kind of a big art gallery here that recently closed, but they had it was all like figurative art. So I would meet like a lot of art. I mean, what I did there was just like, you know, dealing with the paintings and stuff. I didn't create art there, but and yeah, I've worked on little like paying gigs and stuff over the years, but my thing was always to be like a writer artist in comics and make a living off of that.
Nice. Well, then why don't we go into how did that get started? Because you've done some TMNT, you've done some stuff at DC, and of course you've got Planetoid and the follow-up Praxis along with the new book. How did you get in? Because it's not like an industry that's super easy to get into.
Yeah, it's like, so, you know, when I was in high school, I would go to conventions and like show my artwork there and get feedback. And then I went to art school, and I kind of wasn't like, I've been buying and reading comics my whole life, but that like early 2000s period, I was just so involved with like art school and you know, fine art and learning like how to paint, and also just like, you know, meeting people and being in the city and being young and stuff. So I still went to conventions, but there was a period there where it was, you couldn't go online and put your work on like you can now. Like the internet was around, but it wasn't, you couldn't break in really so easily or get your work out there. So I kept going to the conventions, and I would do short stories and thinking like, oh, if you know, if I don't get work off of these, I can at least have this collection of short stories that I can do something with. And that wasn't working. I was getting better and better feedback, and I was getting better at doing it, but I wasn't getting work. And then Image, I don't know, I started Image kind of like, Planetoid was published in like 2012, and I broke in like a little bit earlier than that, like, you know, when they agreed to publish it. And so at that time, like, I was just noticing they were publishing like more kind of weird stuff, like that book Orkstain and the Brandon Graham stuff. So I just said I had a short story idea, and I just expanded it into a series and just kind of like went for it. And then it actually got published. I put it up on this comic book, like digital comic book site, and then Image picked it up after that. And so again, that was like a good time, 2012. They had the Image 25th anniversary, and they had the Image Expo, and Saga had just started, and so yeah, I was, you know, part of that wave. It was like a really good way to, you know, and the work I was doing was like, you know, Planetoid is something I draw and write, so to break in that way was like a very, you know, good thing. Like,
Yeah,
so yeah,
well, and I mean, you'd
happened.
already had it up there on the web. How much had you had done when they picked it up? And I know you said you had it up there, but did you keep soliciting them, or was it something that they happened to see and you guys began talking?
I had been like, over the years, like showing my stuff to Eric Larson at conventions, and kind of like knew him. You know, he was familiar with me because I've been showing him my work since I was like 12 or something. So
Nice.
But I didn't want to be like, you know, I put it through the process. I submitted it, and then I would get like an email, and so it was kind of like this gray area for a while. And my plan was, oh, I'll do like 16 pages, and then I'll show it to them, and then I'll do the next 16 pages, and I'll have this big 32-page comic, and then I'll do something with it. So I wasn't like getting a contract from Image. I said, oh, we'll go ahead and put it up online since it's finished. And then I think that kind of got the gears moving or something. And so then Image was it was on its own, just a little bit. I was like kind of selling on the, there was some like new items or something. So then Image was like, we'll publish it. And so I was already talking to them, but putting it on there and getting a little bit of buzz around it like helped convince them to, you know.
Well, and I imagine it also with the sheer amount of books that are coming out, especially now, having that presence, doing the work yourself, that puts something forward to them because they know you're going to support your own product, to continue to push it and get it out there and into the hands of the fans.
Yeah, that's a big part of it too. Just seeing it through and getting it finished, and yeah, that definitely was a factor.
Sorry, you were breaking up a little bit there. Can you hear me now? Okay,
yeah,
good.
Yeah.
So, well then, is Planetoid still in print? I believe it is, right? In the trade paperback format?
Yeah, the both volumes are in print, and the first one actually got a second printing, like, I don't know, a few months ago, maybe a year ago, or a little less, but yeah, they're both in print.
Okay, well, why don't you give everybody a quick rundown? Because I know that we have it on the shelf, and if you're not here in Sacramento, or even if you are and you're closer to somebody else, take a peek at the book. Why don't you give them a little rundown on what Planetoid is so that they know what they're looking for?
Yeah, it deals with like a pretty simple premise, which is this guy crash lands on this planet, doesn't know anything about it, walks around, and discovers with the audience what the place is. And it's basically where he crashes is like a continent. It's not the whole planet, but it's this floating continent-sized structure of like rotting metal. It was this huge mining operation that's like forgotten about and rotting. And this sort of pirate, outlaw, smuggler type guy crashes on the planet, and he just wants to get out of there. It's like this hellish, you know, apocalyptic kind of setting. But he learns that there's people there and that are surviving, and there's this sort of AI robot sentries who are still like roving the surface of the planet and harassing the people that live there. And so he winds up liking these people and forming kind of a community. And then the second volume continues on like after all those events with that community that was established in the first one. So they're very separate. You can read them independently or read the second one first and go back. The second one refers to the second, but to the first, but they are independent stories.
Okay, and what I found interesting, because when it came out, it was before the explosion of Image and the independent stuff in general. But what I found particularly interesting when it first came out, and what gravitated me towards it, was that it was something that wasn't being done quite as much as is being done now. You were taking on like a hardcore, almost heavy metal style science fiction comic book, and it's not a genre that was really being done at that point. I mean, we had our superheroes that we tended to gravitate towards, but for myself, who loves European science fiction, I thought you were tackling something that just wasn't represented.
Well, and that was one of the, because Planetoid was originally one of those short stories I was going to do to shop around and try to, you know, if I don't get work, I can always send it to heavy metal or something like that. That was my thinking. But I expanded it into the miniseries, and I had the exact same that you said. Science fiction in the 2000s, I don't know how to peg it exactly, but at some point it kind of became bubblegummy and kind of cheesy and or kind of like not that there's anything wrong with like lighthearted science fiction, but there wasn't like this really like H.R. Giger like really kind of oppressively like the visual part of it. And so I was a little bit like bored with comics. And actually the thing that inspired Planetoid like directly was these comics I'd seen in Japan that he's now published here. His name is Tsutomu Nihei, and he did Biomega and Knights of Sidonia and a series called Blame. He's got a new one now with a weird name too, but I had seen his work in Japan. A friend of mine showed it to me, and I was completely blown. It's all black and white, and it's just these huge the world building is just these huge structures and mechanical. It was just really ambitious, and it kind of made me want to kind of go for that. And like you said, like I wasn't really seeing that on the shelves here, and so. And of course, not that I'm responsible for it, but there was like this huge, after Planetoid, there was this huge, I think it had more to do with, because the thing that happened around that time in 2012 is that Disney bought Star Wars. And so Star Wars had been dormant, and then now it's, science fiction, everything is, it just sort of came back into vogue like at that time. But yeah, that was the timing of it.
It was good timing. It came out at exactly the right time. Now, you've mentioned this Japanese creator. Are you influenced at all by the classic European stuff that was coming out in the 60s and 70s, all the way into the 80s?
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's when I was like younger, reading comics like 80s, 90s, when people like bash that period, I think one of the things they forget is that a lot of really great stuff was being reprinted at that time. So if you're a young person, like teenager at that time, it wasn't just like the overblown superhero stuff or, the excessive muscle, image comics stuff. Like it wasn't just that. There was, R. Crumb was being reprinted, Mobius was being reprinted. You couldn't just go online and look up Mobius. Like, I remember hearing that name and being like, who is he? What is that? What are they referring to? What is Mobius? Like, and then finally getting a hold of like an Epic, Marvel's old imprint Epic copy of, I got 2 of the 4 issues of Airtight Garage and just pouring over. I mean, I couldn't get enough of it. And anytime I saw anything Mobius, I'd buy it. And heavy metal, finally getting my hands on like heavy metal in the 90s. Heavy metal was really good in the 90s too, when Kevin Eastman first took over, and it's good now. But yeah, getting those seeing all that European art, science fiction stuff, and then also in the 90s too is the Japanese stuff coming over, like Akira and Ghost in the Shell and stuff. So that was all a really, really big deal, for sure.
Okay, so a lot of different mediums that helped to shape it from a lot of different areas. And so Planetoid's done. Do you have any plans of ever coming back to it with a 3rd volume, or is that something you have not thought about?
No, I've thought about it. I have an idea for a 3rd volume, and I also have an idea of doing like one-shots, like just like full 32-page, like really just pack it full of as much story as I can and do sort of like character specific comics, like one shots. So that's something that appeals to me, because it is very like intense, doing those pages. Planetoid has a kind of serious style to it, and I have a lot of like other things I want to do. So after like those 2 volumes, and having the opportunity to, get my work published by Image, I wanted to try something else and then come back to it. And plus too, I mean, at this point, it's like there's 2 volumes, so it's kind of, I feel a little bit comfortable just like leaving it there and returning later, and letting people buy those 2 volumes.
Yeah, no, and it's not like it's going anywhere. I mean, it's a whole world, and you've already talked about how we've only seen a piece of it. So there's plenty for you to come back to if you feel like it. But I mean, obviously right now you have a new project that is probably taking most of your time at the moment. And what what I find interesting about this, after what we were just talking about with the whole science fiction thing, is there's starting to be a few more, but there are very few fantasy books out there, as opposed to the science fiction or superhero. So now you're taking a whole opposite approach by going back and doing fantasy instead of science fiction.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. There's like a lot of fantasy, books starting to come out now. Yeah, I think a lot of it has to do too. I mean, for me at least, it's like I don't know. Planetoid was kind of about something that was like particular, kind of like at that time. How do I say? Yeah, it's kind of like, for me, I needed like a reset or something. Not just like artistically, but like it feels kind of cluttered, like politically and culturally right now, frankly. Like, like Akira, for example, or Blade Runner. It's kind of like an element in that type of science fiction where, where there's like lots of junk and dystopian science fiction. It kind of feels like accumulation from like 20th century culture, industrialization, whatever. And so, these days with the way the media is, I think it's having kind of a negative effect. And so I wanted to do something that was like clear, like clean and clear, and not, GOGOR, for people who have looked at the images online and have seen it, it's very, the colors are very clear, primary, secondary colors, big shapes, lots of movement, lots of strong direction and stuff. Whereas Planetoid was like very detailed and zoomed in and kind of a little bit obsessive, like that artwork can be. So yeah, that's like, maybe other people are feeling the same way and they want to kind of open things up creatively, and so maybe that's why people are into fantasy right now.
So is this book going to be a lot more fun than Planetoid?
Yeah, Planetoid isn't really that much fun.
No, it wasn't. That's why it is just from the images alone, like you said, it's very bright. Like it's not nearly as dirty or as dark as Planetoid. So it's almost like you went with a completely different artistic style.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And like a lot of the things that I am critical of, like larger, in the larger pop culture scene or something, I feel like I'm guilty of too in Planetoid. So, like the muddy colors and I don't know, I could go on and on, but yeah. I'm sorry, what was your question?
I just asked if your new book was going to be fun, because it sounds like you're avoiding all kinds of serious issues.
That's what. Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that's an element of comics and cartooning also that I enjoy. Like, do you know the artist Gahan Wilson?
No, I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with him.
He's kind of like an Art Crumb type guy. He's very old now, but he did like Playboy editorial type cartoons, like kind of like the Far Side and stuff. But he's got a very loose, funny. They're really funny, his cartoons, and some of his work, I don't know, a year or so ago, and it's like, I do that type of thing in my sketchbook, like goofy, impulsive drawings that are just off the top of your head. And certain types of comics, like Planetoid, there's like no room for that at all. It's a different type of thing. So, which is cool and everything, but I wanted to incorporate that into my comics. So GOGOR, the new series GOGOR, it does deal with like serious issues and like kind of philosophical, high-minded, stuff is in there, but I've created room in it where I can like be impulsive, and if I come up with a funny thing in the background or something, I can draw it, and it's really fun to do. Like I don't think I've ever had this much fun. I mean, sometimes I'm like laughing because it's like, I mean,
it's a good sign.
I don't know. yeah. So I'm hoping people will get that it's not all supposed to be this austere, like, I'm kind of a little bit looking cool. I'm wanting it to look funny or a little off kilter or something, because I like that type of thing. I'm a big fan of Richard Corbin, for example, and he's an amazing, amazing draftsman, but he chooses to use his skill sometimes to draw very odd, awkward thing, like sometimes from very weird angles. And I don't understand his creative choices sometimes, and I like that because I never know. It's spontaneous and weird. So yeah, that's a big theme in this comic for sure, in terms of like the feeling and the tone.
Sweet. Well, then we haven't even touched on it. Why don't you go ahead and tell them what it's about? Because it comes out May 1st, I believe. And are we going to have multiple covers for this one?
There actually is a retailer variant for some
Excellent.
retailers, but there's not like an official variant. No.
Okay, well, why don't you go ahead and tell them what it's about? I think we've kept them waiting long enough. Piqued their interest. Hit us.
It's like you say, it's a fantasy series, and it takes place in this world called Altera. That's like these floating islands. It's like a ring of floating islands. So it's this big world, and it's pretty calm there. There's different tribes and different people and landscapes, and there's like movement and interaction, but it's pretty calm. There's no like war. There's no armies. There's no real kingdoms, and there's like a vague understanding of there having been like a darker period that people aren't totally sure about. They've kind of forgotten. And so there's a boy named Armano who's a student of, there's no magic in it, but there's a thing called the natural arts. And so he's a student of the natural arts, and he goes to this school, this university kind of, and it's attacked. And he flees. And as he's fleeing, he's given a scroll, and he's told to awaken GOGOR, and he doesn't know what any of it means. And so that's pretty much the first issue. That's the setup. That's the introduction to the whole thing. He has to awaken GOGOR, and he doesn't know why the school was attacked by these people, and he doesn't know who GOGOR is, and he hasn't gone out into the larger world. So it has a basic hero's journey start, but then starting with issue 2, we'll get into some unusual territory with it. But yeah, that's the basic setup.
Okay, now I find it interesting that you said there's no magic. Why did you decide to go with the no magic route? Because there's clearly like fantasy stuff there. They're like riding spiders. There's soldiers that are riding spiders. What did you decide to cut it out because it was just too typical?
Yeah, I don't dislike like genre work or like run away from that stuff, but I think a lot of sometimes what can happen is these things become like formalized to the point where it's like it does become generic. And so I mean, a lot of fantasy people think of basically like European medieval times, except with dragons and magic and stuff. And I don't dislike that stuff, but there's other places to go with it. And like Princess Mononoke, there's a lot of things to say about Princess Mononoke, but one of the things I like about it is that the people are basically like tribal people encountering industrialization. So it kind of skips the whole city-state kingdom time period. And or the Dark Crystal is another good one. There's a castle, but there's not really like kingdoms. So, and just my own sort of personal interest, I'm kind of interested in anthropology and things about nation states and how we came to live in these big groups. And it just seems like there's a lot of things to explore without going into that. I mean, magic in particular, I guess you could say, oh, it is magic, just being called by a different name. But I wanted to come up with my own magic, because it can also just be a throwaway thing where it's like, oh, that's magic, and it's like, well, what is this world where you have that as magic? I mean, that would change everything. So having the natural arts thing, I guess it's a little bit of a crutch, but I do have ideas about developing it over time and what it is and how it works and stuff. So that was the thinking on that.
Sorry about that. Okay, so you've got, again, May 1st, it comes out, everybody. Can you tell us, A, how many issues you have planned, and B, where they can go to maybe take a peek at it before it comes out?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it's announced as an ongoing. So if there's demand for it, I've got all sorts of ideas about how to continue on with it. But for right now, I have these first 2 arcs planned, and which just brings me up to like the 10 issue mark. You know, maybe a giant size number 10 or maybe 11. You know, there's some wiggle room there, but I'm just trying to just go straight ahead and get double digits, and I've got enough lead time so that I can do that without having to think about having it be bi-monthly, because I wouldn't have it be monthly, you know, past that. I would have to take time off or something. So I'm just doing like a dead end run for that, and I have an ending in mind. And again, I could continue on. People can go, Image has like a 6-page preview up on the website that should be easy to find. And the previews website has the same preview pages. I think it's 6. And then I have an Instagram account. I'm not really into social media, but I've been using Instagram recently to try to get some stuff out there. But yeah, that's, other than that, I mean, that's I think Image is running some preview pages in some other books, but I'm not sure.
Okay,
like
so they'll have to keep
pages.
their eyes open. And again, they can follow you over on Instagram. I assume it is just your name?
Yeah. Ken Garing.
Ken Garing, that's super easy. And I know you said you're not super active, but it is nice from somebody, especially from a perspective like mine, where I have zero artistic ability, to see the process. So when there's people like you who post, you know, sketches, pencils, especially when you do everything yourself, the inks, the colors, seeing the whole thing wrap up is really kind of fun for us to watch.
Yeah, I need to do more like work in progress stuff. I just haven't been in the routine of doing that, but yeah, I want to take more pictures of like the inking process, because I don't know, it seems like less and less people are doing it. You know, more people are using Cintiq or whatever it's called.
Yeah, when you can go straight to the computer and just do everything right there, and I understand why everybody does it. It makes your life so much easier. It's probably so much quicker, but it is just a little disappointing from my perspective, because then all of that original art is gone.
Yeah, I've got some theories about it too. I don't know. I sometimes feel like I can tell. I don't know. A lot of the veteran guys who do it, I really can't tell, like Greg Capullo and them. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it can make the art weaker or not read as well or something. 'Cause people, again, I feel like I've fallen into this too, where you zoom in too much on the computer, and then when you zoom out, it's drawn right. It looks nice when you're zoomed up, but it doesn't have that sort of Jack Kirby strength motion to it or something. I don't know.
So do you do 100% of your art now on the Cintiq?
None. No.
No, none. What about colors?
I use Photoshop. Yep.
You do use Photoshop for colors, yeah. And nobody does colors in the hand anymore.
although I'm starting to paint. I have picked. I'm on this sort of fantasy painting kick. I'm kind of wanting to go in that direction, or at least try. But we'll see.
Well, see, that would be some great stuff to post on the Instagram, so we have more to take a peek at.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, that's awesome. Well, So I have one more thing I'm hoping you can help us with. I always try to pick your mind a little bit here at the end and find out maybe just something that you can pass on, because there are a ton of people that I talk to in the shop on a weekly basis that are in love with the industry. They want to do their own writing. They want to do their own art. They want to do it. Is there any piece of advice that you can give them? Something that helped you or something that you currently do to keep yourself going that might keep them going?
The one thing I think about, it's hard because I don't remember the exact quote, but I remember reading a Frank Frazetta quote where he said something to the effect of, like, trust your own, like, kind of like follow your nose in terms of your own interests. Like, if you start getting into something, you could bring that back into your art all the time. And so I think no matter what you do, you're going to express like what what's in your head and what you're currently thinking about. So yeah, I would just say, be actively exploring things and curious about things, and bring that to what you're doing, and also just get really, really good. I mean, just try to get really, I think people are their own best critics. So just learn to be really honest with yourself, and in a supportive way. I mean, don't beat yourself up, but just get really honest with yourself, because I think people already know what they need to work on. It's just a matter of hoping they can like slide by or something. And it's like, no, if you're not good at drawing hands, it's like, admit it and get really, really good at drawing hands. Like, go the other way, get crazy about it. Like, that's something I've done over the years, and it's helped me. Like, instead of ignoring what I need to work on, just attacking it.
All right. Well, no, that is actually very helpful. Thank you very much, Ken. We're looking forward to seeing the book come out on May 1st. And do you have any plans for Free Comic Day? You going to hit any shops up there?
I need to finalize it, but I'm hoping to go to some stores here in San Francisco. But I want to come to your shop too.
Well, if you're ever in Sacramento, come on by, say hi, hang out. We got our pugs running around. It's just a nice little mellow environment.
Yeah, no, I definitely want to come by.
Sweet. Well, thank you, sir. And again, look him up online. Just type that in, Ken Garing or GOGOR, GOGOR, and you should be able to see previews. You'll find him and his Instagram, and check it out. Give it a shot. There's a lot of books coming out every single week, but that's why we do these, to give you a little more incentive to try something new. Don't just pick up the Hulk when you're in the shop. Try an independent. Try something new. People who put their lives into this, who work and are as passionate about it as you are about reading. So thank you very much for spending some time with us tonight, Ken, and I'm looking forward to seeing the book.
Cool. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. All right. Have a great night, guys, and we will see you all in the shop. And, of course, tomorrow is New Comic Book Day, so we'll see you 9 to 9 for Wednesday.